The tiny drone whirred like a metallic hummingbird in Harper Williams's steady hands. Its camera lens no bigger than a pencil eraser, but capable of seeing truth from 1,000 feet up. In the dim basement workshop that smelled of motor oil and her father's Old Spice cologne, she whispered to the empty air, "Dad always said the sky doesn't lie. Only people do. Maybe if I can fly high enough, I'll finally see the truth he died for." Above her head, the floorboards creaked as her mother Rachel moved through their cramped rental house, getting ready for another double shift at the diner. They'd lost everything 18 months ago when Captain Jake Williams, test pilot and whistleblower, had his accident over the Virginia mountains. The military called it pilot error. The insurance company called it suspicious circumstances. The bank called it insufficient coverage for the mortgage. Harper called it murder. She set the drone aside and picked up her father's flight helmet, running her fingers over the scratched visor, inside the helmet's padding. She'd sewn micro-transmitters and a signal analysis processor smaller than a credit card. To anyone else, it looked like a grieving daughter clinging to memories. In reality, it was the most sophisticated civilian surveillance system a 17-year-old MIT-bound robotics champion could build from Radio Shack parts and military surplus electronics. Not that she was MIT-bound anymore. Can't afford college when your family becomes a cautionary tale. "Harper, honey, you need to get ready for school," her mother called down the stairs, her voice carrying that forced brightness that meant she'd been crying again. "Coming, Mom." If you're feeling that rush of what's going to happen next, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to share where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. For those who want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right under this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me bring you more inspiring tales of courage and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being here. Now, let's see what happens when push comes to shove. Harper sealed the workshop and climbed the stairs, passing the kitchen table where her mother sat with a stack of unpaid bills and her father's death certificate. Rachel Williams had aged 5 years in 18 months. Her auburn hair now streaked with premature gray. Her Air Force spouse confidence replaced by the hollow-eyed exhaustion of someone fighting a war she couldn't win. "Mrs. Patterson from the school board called yesterday," Rachel said without looking up. "She wanted to remind us that your scholarship opportunities depend on maintaining a low profile. No more questions about the aerospace curriculum funding." Harper grabbed her backpack, checking that her modified laptop was secured in the hidden compartment. "Since when do scholarship opportunities come with gag orders? Since your father decided to be a hero instead of keeping his mouth shut." The words came out sharper than Rachel intended. She immediately softened her tone. "I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean—" "You meant it. And you're not wrong." Harper kissed her mother's forehead. "Heroes get their families destroyed. I learned that lesson." But as Harper walked the 2 miles to Milbrook High School, she wasn't thinking about keeping a low profile. She was thinking about the encrypted fragment she'd intercepted last week from a military contractor's satellite uplink. 3 words that had made her blood freeze. William's situation contained. Her father had been dead for over a year. What situation needed containing Milbrook High School, sprawled across 30 acres of Virginia farmland like a brick and glass testament to federal education dollars, most of it flowing from defense contractor partnerships? The parking lot showcased the local economic divide, beat-up pickup trucks belonging to farm kids, sensible sedans driven by teacher offspring, and a collection of luxury vehicles that screamed defense contractor executive children. Harper walked past the gleaming Mercedes that belonged to Bryce Morrison, son of Governor Patricia Morrison and unofficial king of Milbrook's social hierarchy, at 18. Bryce had the kind of effortless privilege that came from never doubting your place in the world. Tall, broad-shouldered, with his mother's political smile and his father's steel-gray eyes, he moved through the halls like he owned them, which, considering his family's influence over the school board and his mother's control over state education funding, he basically did. Harper had made it through most of her junior year by perfecting the art of invisibility. Sit in the back, don't volunteer answers, eat lunch alone, go straight home. It worked until it didn't. Williams. The voice stopped her cold as she tried to slip past the gym entrance. Bryce Morrison stood in the doorway, flanked by his usual crew of politically connected classmates. His gray eyes held the kind of predatory intelligence that came from growing up in rooms where people's lives were bargaining chips. "Need to talk to you, privately." It wasn't a request. Harper's fight-or-flight response kicked in, but there was nowhere to run. 300 students milled around them. But she might as well have been alone. Nobody challenged Bryce Morrison, not if they wanted to keep their parents' jobs, their college recommendations, their futures. "I'm going to be late for class." "You're going to be late for a lot of things if you don't come with me right now." The threat was delivered with that trademark Morrison smile, the one that had helped his mother win 2 gubernatorial elections. But his eyes stayed cold as winter steel. Harper followed him into the gymnasium, her modified laptop bouncing against her hip. The space echoed with their footsteps, empty except for maintenance equipment and the smell of industrial disinfectant. Bryce led her past the bleachers to a storage room behind the equipment cage, where cleaning supplies and athletic gear created a maze of shadows. He shut the door. "Your daddy was a problem," Bryce said without preamble, his political smile vanishing. "He almost cost some very important people a lot of money with his little whistleblowing adventure. Lucky for everyone. Problems have a way of solving themselves at 10,000 feet. Harper's hands clenched into fists. "My father died serving his country. Your father died because he forgot that service means following orders, not asking inconvenient questions." Bryce stepped closer, and Harper caught a whiff of expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Entitlement. Maybe. Or just the smell of someone who'd never faced consequences. "The thing is, Williams, dead heroes sometimes have daughters who inherit their stupidity. My mother's people have been watching you. That little electronics hobby of yours, those questions you used to ask about the aerospace program funding, we know you've been sniffing around where you don't belong." Harper's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." Bryce pulled out his phone, swiping to a collection of photos. Harper's blood turned to ice as she recognized images of herself working in the basement workshop, walking to school, sitting alone at lunch. "Cute little spy setup you've got down there. Very comprehensive." The last word carried implications that made Harper's skin crawl. "Here's how this works," Bryce continued, sliding his phone back into his pocket. "You're going to stop playing Nancy Drew with your little gadgets. You're going to stop asking questions about things that don't concern you, and you're going to remember that some secrets are worth more than your family's already pathetic existence." "And if I don't," Bryce's smile returned, but it was the kind predators wore right before they struck. "Then your mother might have another tragic accident. Maybe a gas leak in that little rental house. Maybe brake failure on the way to work. These things happen to families who don't know when to quit." The casual way he discussed murdering her mother hit Harper like a physical blow. This wasn't teenage bullying. This was a threat backed by the kind of power that had already killed her father and destroyed dozens of other families. I want you to understand something, Williams. Bryce moved even closer, close enough that Harper could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. You exist because we allow it. Your mother works because we permit it. You breathe because it hasn't become inconvenient yet. Harper found her voice. What do you want from me? I want you to remember your place. Bryce glanced at his smartwatch, a sleek military-grade device that probably cost more than Harper's mother made in 6 months. And I want you to demonstrate that you understand the natural order of things. He pointed at his shoes, expensive Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine. Get on your knees. The words hit Harper like a slap. Around them, the storage room seemed to shrink, the shadows pressing closer. What? You heard me? Get on your knees and show these shoes the respect they deserve. Show me the respect I deserve. Show my family the respect we've earned by running this state while people like your father played hero and got themselves killed. Harper stared at him, her mind racing through options. She could fight, but Bryce was bigger and stronger, and there were no witnesses. She could scream, but who would believe her word against the governor's son? She could run, but where would she go that his family's influence couldn't reach? Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Sometimes, Harper, you have to take a tactical loss to win the strategic war. Harper slowly sank to her knees on the cold concrete floor. That's better. Bryce's voice carried a satisfaction that made Harper's stomach turn. Now, I want you to... The door burst open, interrupting whatever degradation he'd planned. Mrs. Rodriguez, the phys ed teacher, stood silhouetted in the doorway, her hand still on the handle. What's going on in here? Bryce's political instincts kicked in instantly, just having a conversation with Williams about her attitude problem. She tripped, and I was helping her up. Mrs. Rodriguez's dark eyes moved from Bryce to Harper, still kneeling on the floor. Something passed across the teacher's face, recognition. Maybe. Or the kind of understanding that came from seeing too many power games played out in school hallways. Harper, you should get to class. The bell's about to ring. Harper scrambled to her feet, her knees aching from the concrete. As she brushed past Bryce, she felt him lean close enough to whisper in her ear, "This isn't over. Next time, there won't be any interruptions." Harper fled the storage room on shaking legs. Mrs. Rodriguez's concerned voice following her. "Harper, if you need to talk," but Harper was already gone, pushing through the gym doors and into the crowded hallway where 300 students continued their normal Tuesday morning routines. Oblivious to the fact that she'd just been systematically humiliated and threatened with her family's murder. She made it to the nearest bathroom before the tears came, locked in a stall. Harper pulled out her modified laptop and tried to steady her hands enough to type. The device looked like a standard school-issued computer, but Harper had gutted the internals and replaced them with military surplus components her father had salvaged over the years. Signal processors, encrypted storage, wireless interceptors that could grab data transmissions from half a mile away. She'd built it originally to try to find evidence of what really happened to her father's plane. Now, it might be the only thing standing between her family and whatever had happened to the other military families who'd asked too many questions. As she booted up the surveillance software, Harper noticed something strange. The device was showing active connections she hadn't initiated. Multiple encrypted data streams, military-grade encryption, all stemming from signals that had been captured. Harper checked the timestamp. 23 minutes ago, right around the time she'd been in the storage room with Bryce. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she traced the signal sources. The readings didn't make sense. The intercepted data showed military contractor communications, government agency traffic, even what looked like encrypted phone calls between high-level political figures. But her equipment couldn't penetrate that level of security on its own. She'd need direct access to the transmission devices, or Harper's blood went cold as she realized what had happened. Bryce's smartwatch. When he'd leaned close to threaten her. When he'd pulled out his phone to show her the surveillance photos. His military-grade smartwatch had been inches from her laptop, close enough for the Bluetooth and near-field communication protocols to handshake automatically. For exactly 23 minutes. Her surveillance equipment had been synced with whatever high-security networks Bryce Morrison had access to. 23 minutes of accidentally downloading some of the most classified communications in the state of Virginia. Harper's hands shook as she began decrypting the intercepted files. Most were gibberish. Protected by encryption, she couldn't crack. But some of the voice communications had been transmitted in lower security protocols, probably because they were considered routine administrative traffic. The first file made her heart stop. Operation Cleanup, Priority Targets, Fiscal Year Update. Saw it her father's voice, talking to someone she didn't recognize. The titanium dynamics safety reports are completely fabricated. I've got documentation showing they know their guidance systems fail in humid conditions, but they're delivering them anyway. If this gets out to Congress, we're talking about a $10 billion recall and criminal charges for half the Pentagon procurement office. Another voice, Jake, you need to let this go. There are bigger things at stake than one defense contract. Bigger than dead pilots, bigger than planes falling out of the sky because some contractor decided to save money on moisture seals. Bigger than your family's safety. The line went quiet for a long moment. When her father spoke again, his voice was different, harder. Are you threatening my family? Colonel, I'm trying to save it. There are 47 families on the cleanup list. Jake, 47 military families who asked the wrong questions, pushed the wrong investigations, threatened the wrong people. Some had accidents. Some had financial disasters. Some just disappeared. Harper's vision blurred as she realized she was listening to a recording of her father's final weeks alive. Your daughter's got a real future ahead of her. Jake, MIT, robotics, maybe even a career in aerospace engineering. Would be a shame if that future got complicated. You bastards! You're talking about murdering families to protect a defense contract. We're talking about protecting national security. The titanium dynamics relationship keeps 40,000 jobs in Virginia alone. The political relationships involved reach all the way to the governor's mansion and beyond. You're threatening an entire ecosystem. Jake, I'm trying to keep pilots alive. And I'm trying to keep you alive. Drop the investigation. Transfer to Alaska or Germany or wherever. Take your family and disappear quietly. That's the only way this ends well for the Williams family. Harper could hear her father's decision in his silence. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a man who'd already chosen his grave. I swore an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I didn't take an exception clause for defense contractors. Then you've chosen for your family, too. The recording ended. Harper sat in the bathroom stall, staring at the timestamp on the file. 3 weeks before her father's plane went down over the Virginia mountains. 3 weeks before Captain Jake Williams became victim number 31. on Operation Cleanup's target list. She opened the next file with trembling fingers. A spreadsheet. Names, dates, methods. 47 families. Just like the voice had said. Some marked as completed with neat little green check marks. Vehicle accidents. House fires. Sudden illnesses. Financial ruin. Relocation and disappearance. The Williams family was listed at entry 31, aircraft malfunction, 03-15-2023, status completed. Monitoring of surviving family members ongoing. Harper scrolled down to the active targets. 5 families were marked as in progress, including the Tommy Chen's family. The kid who ran the underground student radio station and had been asking questions about school funding sources. At the bottom of the list was a new entry, added just 2 days ago, entry 48 Harper Williams, age 17, method TBD, authorization P. Morrison, priority escalated due to technical capabilities, timeline immediate. Harper's mother's name appeared in a separate column, collateral leverage if needed. The bathroom door opened, and Harper heard footsteps approaching her stall. She quickly closed the files and powered down the laptop. Her heart hammering so hard she was sure whoever was outside could hear it. "Harper, you in here?" Mrs. Rodriguez's voice, concerned and gentle. Harper cleared her throat. "Yeah, just not feeling well. Can I talk to you for a minute, when you're ready?" Harper wiped her eyes and stepped out of the stall. Mrs. Rodriguez was leaning against the sinks, her arms crossed in a way that looked casual but ready. There was something different about the way the teacher carried herself, a kind of alertness that didn't fit with teaching high school phys ed. "What happened in that storage room wasn't okay," Mrs. Rodriguez said quietly. "I don't know what you mean." "Harper." The teacher's voice carried an authority that made Harper look up. "I spent 8 years in naval intelligence before I started teaching. I know what intimidation looks like. I know what power abuse looks like. And I know what surveillance equipment looks like." Harper's blood turned to ice. "I don't have—" "The laptop modifications are very impressive. Military-grade components. Civilian camouflage. Your father taught you well." The casual mention of her father made Harper's knees weak. "How do you? Jake Williams and I served together in Afghanistan. He saved my life twice and never let me buy him a beer for it." Mrs. Rodriguez moved closer, lowering her voice. "He also told me that, if anything happened to him, his daughter might need someone who understood the kind of enemies he'd made." Harper stared at the woman she'd known for 3 years as a simple gym teacher. "You knew about the defense contractors, about what Dad found. I knew Jake was investigating something that was going to get him killed. I tried to talk him out of it. But your father was—" Mrs. Rodriguez smiled sadly. "He was too good a man to let bad people get away with murder. They killed him, yes, and now they're coming for you." The simple confirmation hit Harper harder than all of Bryce's threats. This wasn't paranoia or teenage imagination. A decorated military veteran was telling her that her father had been murdered, and she was next. "What am I supposed to do?" Harper whispered. Mrs. Rodriguez glanced around the empty bathroom, then looked directly into Harper's eyes. "What would your father do?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Harper thought about the man who'd taught her to fly drones, to read satellite images, to never back down from bullies. The man who'd died rather than let corrupt officials murder pilots with faulty equipment. He'd fight back. "Then we better make sure you're ready for war." Mrs. Rodriguez handed Harper a small piece of paper with a phone number written in careful block letters. "There's an FBI agent named Michael Torres who's been investigating defense contractor fraud for the past 2 years. He knew your father. He's been waiting for someone with proof. Harper looked at the paper, then at the woman who'd just revealed herself as an ally in a fight Harper was only beginning to understand. What about Bryce? What about his family? The Morrison political machine has been protecting Titanium Dynamics for a decade. Governor Morrison's campaigns are funded by defense contractor money. Her son isn't just a bully, Harper. He's an enforcer. The bathroom door opened, and two freshman girls walked in, chattering about some social media drama. Mrs. Rodriguez nodded toward the exit. We'll talk more later. But, Harper, the teacher's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen combat. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't trust anyone you haven't verified. And whatever you do, don't let them know what you've discovered until you're ready to use it. Harper walked out of the bathroom on unsteady legs, her mind reeling with the implications of everything she'd learned. The halls of Milbrook High School looked the same, but she was seeing them through different eyes now. Every teacher could be an ally or an enemy. Every student could be a potential threat or witness. And somewhere in these halls, Bryce Morrison was walking around with access to military-grade communications equipment, probably reporting back to his mother about the Williams situation. Harper made it through her remaining classes on autopilot, her thoughts consumed by the files she'd accidentally intercepted. 47 families. 47 military families who'd tried to do the right thing and paid for it with their lives, their livelihoods, their freedom. Her father was number 31. She was supposed to be number 48. But Harper Williams was not going down without a fight. And unlike the other families on that list, she had something they hadn't: proof. Digital, encrypted, legally admissible proof of a conspiracy that reached from defense contractors to the governor's mansion to God knew where else. As the final bell rang and students streamed toward the parking lot, Harper made her decision. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to hide. She wasn't going to let her mother become another accident on Operation Cleanup's growing list. She was going to do what her father would have done. She was going to fight back. But first, she needed to make sure she was ready for the war that was coming. Because Bryce Morrison and his family had just made the biggest mistake of their political lives. They'd threatened the daughter of Captain Jake Williams, and Captain Jake Williams had taught his daughter very well indeed. That evening, Harper sat in her basement workshop, surrounded by the ghosts of her father's dreams and the weight of 47 families' worth of secrets. The intercepted files glowed on her laptop screen like digital tombstones, each entry representing lives destroyed by people who treated murder like a line item in a budget report. She dialed the number Mrs. Rodriguez had given her. Torres, the voice was crisp, professional, tired. Agent Torres, this is Harper Williams, Jake Williams's daughter. A long pause. Harper, I've been waiting for your call for 18 months. You knew I'd call. Your father told me you were brilliant, said you'd inherited his stubborn streak and his sense of justice. I figured sooner or later you'd dig up something that would make you want to fight back. Agent Torres's voice softened. I'm sorry about your dad, kid. He was one of the good ones. Harper's throat tightened. I have proof about Operation Cleanup, about the defense contractors, about everything. Where are you right now? Home, in my workshop. Stay there. Don't leave. Don't talk to anyone. Don't use any electronic devices except this phone. I'm 40 minutes away. The line went dead. Harper spent the next 40 minutes copying the intercepted files to multiple encrypted drives. Her hands steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was what her father had trained her for, without realizing it all those hours teaching her about signals intelligence, about documentation, about the importance of keeping meticulous records. Agent Torres looked exactly like Harper had imagined mid-40s. Weathered face, eyes that had seen too much corruption and not enough justice. He examined her workshop with the appreciation of someone who understood technology, nodding at the modified equipment and sophisticated setup. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "This is better than most FBI field offices." Harper handed him the encrypted drives. "Everything's on there. The target list, the recordings, financial transactions, communication logs. 47 families. Agent Torres. 47. Torres plugged one of the drives into his laptop and began scrolling through the files. His expression grew darker with each page. "Jesus, we suspected something like this, but the scope..." He looked up at Harper. "How did you get access to these communications?" Harper explained about Bryce's smartwatch, about the accidental sync, about the military-grade encryption that had been temporarily bypassed. Torres listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. "The Morrison connection changes everything," he said finally. "We've been investigating titanium dynamics for 2 years, but we could never get close to the political protection. Governor Morrison's been untouchable." "Not anymore." Torres closed his laptop and looked directly at Harper. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. We've been building a task force FBI. Pentagon Inspector General. Congressional oversight. We've got enough evidence to take down the titanium dynamics executives. But we needed the political connection. This gives us everything. What happens now? Now we move fast, before they realize what you've discovered." Torres stood, pacing the small workshop. "There's going to be a coordinated operation, multiple arrests, multiple locations. But Harper, I need you to understand something once we trigger this. There's no going back. Your life is going to change forever." Harper thought about her father, about the other families on that list, about Tommy Chen's family marked for elimination. Good. It's time for change. 3 days later, Harper walked into Milbrook High School knowing it would be her last day as an invisible student. Agent Torres had been busy. Search warrants were being prepared. Arrest teams were positioning, and federal prosecutors were reviewing what Torres called the biggest military contractor fraud case in Virginia history. But first, Harper had one last piece of business to finish. She found Bryce Morrison in the senior courtyard, holding court with his usual circle of politically connected classmates. He saw her approaching, and his expression shifted from casual arrogance to something sharper. "Williams, didn't expect to see you back here after our little conversation." Harper stopped just outside the circle, close enough for everyone to hear her clearly. "I wanted to thank you, Bryce." The unexpected response threw him off balance. "Thank me for being so careless with your smartwatch security protocols." Harper pulled out her phone and began reading from the screen. "Operation Cleanup. Priority targets. Fiscal year update. Entry 48 Harper Williams, age 17. Method TBD. Authorization P. Morrison." The color drained from Bryce's face. Around them, his friends shifted uncomfortably, sensing something dangerous in the air. "I don't know what you think your priority escalated due to technical capabilities. Timeline immediate." Harper looked up from her phone. "Your mother's not just the governor, Bryce. She's been authorizing murders." Bryce lunged forward, but Harper was ready. She sidestepped his grab and kept talking, her voice carrying across the courtyard. 47 military families. Bryce, 47 families who tried to expose defense contractor fraud. And your family had them killed. My father was number 31. You're lying, Bryce shouted, but his voice cracked with panic. You don't have proof of anything. Harper smiled, and for the first time in 18 months, it felt genuine. Actually, I do. 23 minutes of accidentally intercepted communications from your military-grade smartwatch. Every classified conversation, every encrypted message, every detail of Operation Cleanup. Bryce's face went white. Around them, students were pulling out phones, recording the confrontation. The political instincts that had been drilled into him since childhood kicked in. Nobody's going to believe the word of some crazy girl whose father crashed his own plane. The accusation hit exactly the way Harper had expected it to. She'd been preparing for this moment for 3 days, knowing that Bryce would try to use her father's death as a weapon. You're right, she said calmly. Nobody would believe just my word. That's why I gave everything to the FBI. As if summoned by her words. Black SUVs began pulling into the school parking lot. Harper counted 6 vehicles, each one carrying federal agents with arrest warrants and evidence boxes. Bryce's phone rang. He answered it with shaking hands. Mom! His voice was barely a whisper. Mom! They're here. The FBI is here. Harper could hear Governor Morrison's voice through the phone, sharp with panic. What did you do? Bryce, what did you tell her? I didn't tell her anything. She's somehow intercepted? The line went dead. Agent Torres appeared at Harper's shoulder, flanked by 2 other federal agents. Bryce Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and violations of the Espionage Act. As the agents cuffed Bryce, Harper felt something she hadn't experienced since her father's funeral, a sense of completion. Justice wasn't just an abstract concept anymore. It was handcuffs clicking into place around the wrists of someone who'd threatened to murder her mother. The governor, Harper asked Torres quietly, arrested 20 minutes ago at the state capitol, along with the CEO of Titanium Dynamics and 12 other co-conspirators. Torres handed Harper a business card. Congratulations, kid. You just brought down the biggest political corruption ring in Virginia history. The news broke that evening, sending shockwaves through the state's political establishment. Governor Patricia Morrison, arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit murder and accepting bribes from defense contractors. Titanium Dynamics executives perp-walked in front of cameras, their stock price plummeting as the Pentagon announced a complete review of their contracts. Harper watched the coverage from her basement workshop, her mother beside her for the first time in months. Rachel Williams had been silent for most of the evening, processing the revelation that her husband's death had been part of a systematic campaign of murder. 47 families, Rachel said finally. All those people. Dad saved them, Harper replied. Every family that doesn't have to go through what we went through. Every pilot who won't die because of faulty equipment. He saved them all. And screen. Agent Torres was giving a press conference, explaining how the investigation had been cracked open by a courageous young woman who refused to let her father's sacrifice be meaningless. What happens now? Rachel asked. Harper looked around the workshop, at the equipment her father had left behind, at the tools she'd used to bring down his killers. Now we make sure this never happens again. 6 months later, Harper Williams testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee, explaining how civilian oversight and technological vigilance could prevent future operation cleanups. The Skywatch Protocol, named after her father's call sign, established new requirements for defense contractor oversight and whistleblower protection. Bryce Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. His mother received life without parole. Titanium Dynamics ceased to exist. Its assets liquidated to pay compensation to the 47 families they'd destroyed. Harper accepted a full scholarship to MIT, but deferred for a year to establish the Captain Jake Williams Foundation, dedicated to protecting military families who expose corruption. Mrs. Rodriguez left teaching to become the foundation's director of security. Tommy Chen's family, removed from the target list when the conspiracy collapsed, helped Harper launch the foundation's teen advocacy program. "Your dad didn't just save our family," Tommy told her at the foundation's opening ceremony. "He saved families we'll never even know about." Standing at the podium in a conference room filled with military families, survivors, and federal investigators, Harper looked out at faces that showed hope instead of fear for the first time in years. "My father believed that the truth has weight," she said. "That lies might fly for a while, but eventually, the truth pulls them down. He died proving that belief." She paused, thinking about the drone that had started everything, about the basement workshop where she'd learned to fight back, about the moment when Bryce Morrison's arrogance had accidentally given her the weapons to destroy him. "But he also taught me that the truth needs help sometimes. It needs people willing to fly high enough to see what others miss. It needs people willing to fight for it, even when the cost is everything they have." Harper smiled, and it was her father's smile, confident, determined, unafraid. Today, we make sure that every family has someone flying high enough to see the truth. We make sure that no one else has to face this fight alone. In the audience, Rachel Williams wiped away tears as she watched her daughter, no longer a victim, no longer invisible, become the voice her husband had died to create. The sky, as Captain Jake Williams had always said, doesn't lie. And neither, it turned out, did his daughter. As the applause died down and the crowd began to disperse, Harper noticed a young girl lingering near the back of the room, maybe 13 years old, with the kind of hollow eyes Harper recognized from her own mirror during the darkest months after her father's death. Harper approached her carefully. "I'm Harper. What's your name?" "Emma Chen. Tommy's my older brother." The girl's voice was barely a whisper. "My dad. He was going to be next on their list, before you stopped them." Harper knelt down to Emma's eye level. "Your dad's safe now. Your whole family is safe. But what if there are others? What if there are more people like them out there?" The question hit Harper with unexpected force. In all the months of investigation, arrest, and trials, she'd been focused on bringing down this particular conspiracy. But Emma was right. Corruption didn't exist in isolation. There would always be powerful people willing to murder for money, to silence inconvenient truths, to destroy families who stood in their way. "Then we'll find them," Harper said simply. "We'll fly high enough to see them, and we'll stop them, too." Emma's eyes brightened slightly. "Can you teach me, like your dad taught you?" Harper thought about her father's lessons, about the patient hours in the workshop, about the values that had cost him his life, but saved dozens of other families. The legacy wasn't just about justice for past wrongs, it was about preventing future ones. "Come by the foundation next Saturday," Harper said. "Bring your brother, we're starting a junior surveillance program." As Emma walked away with something that looked like hope in her step, Harper felt her phone buzz. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez. New case just came across FBI channels. Defense contractor in North Carolina. 3 suspicious deaths. Interested. Harper looked around the conference room. At the faces of families who could finally sleep without fear. At the federal agents who were committed to preventing another Operation Cleanup. At her mother talking quietly with other military widows about healing and moving forward. Her father's watch, the one she wore every day, now showed 3:47 p.m. somewhere in North Carolina. Another family might be facing the same choice her father had faced: stay silent and let people die, or speak up and risk everything. Harper typed back, "Send me everything you have." Outside the conference room windows, a small aircraft traced lazy circles through the Virginia sky. Probably a student pilot practicing maneuvers at the local flight school. Harper watched it bank and turn, remembering her father's words about the sky never lying. The truth was still out there, waiting to be discovered by someone willing to fly high enough to see it. And Harper Williams would keep flying, keep watching, keep fighting, until every family had someone looking out for them from above. The sky, after all, was big enough for all of them.